All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Diane, if would you please take roll?
Representative Berger,
Here.
Representative Nemec,
Here.
Representative Obermueller,
Here.
Representative O'Hearn,
Here.
Representative Pendergraph,
Here.
Representative Smith,
Here.
Representative Stivar,
Present.
Representative Wiley,
Here.
Chairman Brown.
Here. Committee, thank you for being here. My apologies to the public here for having to watch a seat, but we're going to try to bust through all three of these bills today. And in order to do that, we're going to be eating in front of you. But we're going to pick up off of House Bill 154 today. We left off with this one. Representative Banks, you gave us a pretty quick run through, but I'm going to open this back up to you for consideration if you'd like to run through any more thoughts and or ideas that you have on the bill. And then we will go from there out to the department. I do know we have some information that was handed out to you, committee. If you take a look inside your folder, you should have that information. With that being said, Representative Banks, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Back here on House Bill 154. After talking with some members of this committee and some other people I'm involved in this process, I want to turn your attention to page 3. And Roman at number 2 under section N there, so line 12. That 11 years been something that we've been considering floating around. So I want to present to this committee, we increase that number. And I could leave this at your preference to 15 or 20 years. That way, I know we had some concerns about 61% of the registered vehicles falling under this category. If we were to raise that up and level the playing field out, I think we would get to the targets of what this bill is trying to accomplish, the target audience. So upon your discretion, I would submit that to you. And I was also sent, and I should have asked before, an amendment by our Department of Transportation. And are they going to present that amendment later on? Okay, I'll let them do that. And other than that change there, I would stand for any more questions you had for me.
Okay, committee, we did hear the run through the bill. I suspect everybody's read it, has a pretty good understanding of the bill. So open this up for any more questions to Representative Banks. Is there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Representative Banks. We may, we'll call you back up when we work the bill. We'll go ahead and have YDOT come forward if you would, please. Thank you for coming today. If you would, please make sure you introduce yourself, state your name and your title. Mr. Rossetti. Floor is your guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator, and I have with me today Ms. Lacey Bruckner from my Compliance and Investigation Unit. Generally, sir, I would probably jump right into the bill, but I think, as you mentioned, I believe the bringer did have a pretty good explanation, and I think you guys had a pretty robust discussion on Tuesday. So if you'll allow, I think I can provide some background that may address some of the other questions that the committee had prior to actually jumping into the bill from the department's perspective.
At your will.
Thank you. So the bill here before the committee is really substantially similar to the bill that we saw that was introduced last year, Senate File 22. Members of the committee that were around during the interim are probably aware we took that bill and that actually was reworked and came back to you guys as House Bill 41, which is the light trailer permanent registration bill. So I think the concepts in here are virtually identical to that as the way we worked through it. The numbers are slightly different, but it's something we're very familiar with. I think as you look at what happened in House Bill 41, really that was tailored more not to address the costs of the vehicle registrations, but really to address the efficiency and the effectiveness of our counties that actually do this registration. Again, that targeted low dollar amount registrations and just made it easier to get those in and out the door so that you didn't have to come in annually to do it, and the treasurers didn't have to annually send you reminders. So that's kind of the difference between the two bills. I think much of the discussion on Tuesday about this bill really kind of centered around the differential cost between vehicle registrations here in Wyoming versus the surrounding states. And this is an issue that we've addressed at least the 7 years I've been in this position. It comes up on a very frequent basis. And I think the issue here really is the perception that the vehicle registrations in Wyoming are too high. And I think the question we need to ask is why. It's not really a vehicle registration question. It's really a tax and fee question. And I believe you guys were getting to that on Tuesday in that discussion. I'm certainly not a tax expert. I'm a vehicle administrator, but I can say that in my capacity in this position and the work we've done through the committee and various interims, what I can say is if we take a deep dive into the 6 contiguous states, those are the states that touch our borders. I think what you can look at is in 4 key areas, 5 out of 6 have higher residential property tax rates. 5 out of 6 have both corporate and personal income tax rates. 5 out of 6 have higher sales tax rates, and 5 out of 6 actually have higher fuel tax rates. In all those examples, no one state is the low. So there's not one that's choosing to be the lowest in everything in order to draw people in, right? It's a mix. It's your body in those states are making those decisions about what level to put those things at. And really what it is it's that mix of revenue sources that you guys use to fund basic government services. So that's kind of the comparison in those comparative states. You've heard the testimony and you guys are aware. Specific to vehicle registrations, we are high, but again, it's because we're lower in most of those other areas. So I think that's the context by which we've got to look at this bill. Specific to the vehicle registration fees, you guys are aware that the county fees have sorry, Mr. Chairman, I thought you were waving at me, Representative. I can stop. You guys are aware that the county fees structure has been largely the same, at least as far as I could go back. I looked all the way back to 1984, and that fee structure is the same. It's a 6-year depreciation schedule that's based on the value of that vehicle. The state vehicle fee actually, though, was last adjusted in 2017. Prior to that, it had been since 1975 that those had been adjusted. That is the smaller portion of the fee. That is a set fee that's based on the class of vehicle or the weight of the vehicle. When you guys do your taxes, typically that's the part you can't deduct. It's not a tax. It's considered a fee for those purposes. But so those were adjusted in 2017. The key with the county fee again is that after that 6th year of service, that fee never changes on the county side. So whatever that is in year 6 and beyond, that fee remains the same unless this body decides to adjust those fees. It's the same thing with the state fee. We can't go and adjust a fee. That's a decision that you guys held and we're comfortable with that. So beyond year 6, your registration fees will not change. The question that was asked also was, isn't it already against the law to register a vehicle out of state? It is. Has been for a very long time. And again, in 2017, this body did empower us with what I think is popularly called the rebuttable presumption law. Great term, rolls off the tongue. But really what that was, it established the process by which an investigation could be started into somebody who had plates from the north that happened to live in Cheyenne that you see on a regular basis. It allows certain officials to investigate that and turn that over to us, and then we can look into it. Since 2017, we've recovered about $50,000 in revenue to the state. However, there's additional revenues that people have just voluntarily collected without us having to prompt them. Send them a letter. They oh, geez, sorry, I didn't know. Go and pay it. The 50,000 are the ones that we had to take to either a hearing or go through additional notice and get them to pay those fees. So that's both sales tax and vehicle registration. So that's additional recoveries that have come back to the state. As we start going down the road of permanent registrations, there's 2 areas that we have a little bit of concern with, and they're not big hills to overcome. We have a little experience here with the Pioneer plate. Those are the vehicles that are 25 years or older. The only concerns that we really run into with that is that you remove the requirement to have the insurance checked annually. That's usually a process of the registration when you register a vehicle. And with those Pioneer plates, we don't have that. The other thing that happens is over time, as people move, you start losing track of where those folks are and what their addresses are. Again, not huge obstacles. And I believe as technology advances, that's an easy one to overcome. A representative or a person in the public could simply go online and update their addresses. So, I mean, that's something that's coming down the line, but just something to keep in mind as you talk about this. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think that's the background I wanted to cover. I do have a few things to say about the bill directly, just to kind of, I think, provide some clarification. And then Ms. Bruckner would be prepared to speak to the amendment if that was your preference.
Committee, any questions for Mr. Rossetti at this point? Seeing none, Mr. Rossetti, if you'd go ahead and go over your analysis of the bill, please.
Excellent. So just so you guys are aware that the context of the amendments are really just simply, as we looked at the bill, if this is the pleasure of the body, they were just amendments that between us and the treasurers, we felt would make this cleaner and more clear as far as on the administrative side. It would make it very clear to us and the counties what should happen in this instance in case a customer wanted to come in and take advantage of the program. So that's the context of the amendment. I think though, when you get into the bill, I think really where you get to is on page 4, lines 8 through 12. And I just want to go over this again so you kind of understand what fees are included in this bill. And in those lines, it talks about the fees in 31.3.101 A and B. And in A Romanet I is the county portion of the fee. And that's that proportionate registration that occurs over time, the depreciated rate on the value. In Romanet II, it's actually the fee schedule for state vehicles. So that's the fee. That's just what you customarily pay when you go in, but that lets you know exactly what you're talking about. The stuff that's in B is a topic that I think we'll cover in the amendment. So unless there's some specific questions there, I think we'll hold it until we get to that. But so that's your customary registration fee. There's also some language in there on line 10 that talks about the fees in H and J. And the H and J are not included in your 5 times if you try to do this, because those are elected donations that you're making. H, if you guys are interested, is the organ donation program. So if I go in and register and want to give $10 to organ donation, that's optional. In this scenario, I wouldn't have to make a $50 donation. And then J is the wildlife trust accounts for the transportation system. So those are those 2 things. So that way you understand the fees that we're really talking about here in the bill. I think another important thing to understand on the fees is really kind of how those things are separated. So in the state fee, those all go into the highway fund and are used for the administration, construction, and enforcement on the highways. The county side is really kind of a modified ad valorem property tax, and those are distributed through the fee schedule through the treasurer. And roughly 72% of those fees go to schools. So that's kind of the fees and where those monies go for you guys. I think based on the process in the bill, and this was prior to the bringer's suggestion that we extend this out. I did find some vehicles though that would fit the parameters, and I think just to wrap your head around what this might cost. So I found a vehicle on a lot here, a 2012 3/4 ton crew cab 4-wheel drive pickup. That initial MSRP would have been about $35,490. The weight of that is 6,398 pounds. With the administrative fee and 5 times the registration fee, that permanent registration for that vehicle is about $1,336. So that's what a person would pay to get a permanent plate. I also found a 2022 3/4 ton XL 4-wheel drive on a lot in Billings. So it's a brand new vehicle, very comparable. The difference in sticker price is about $11,000. This sticker price is $46,000. So right now you'd have to pay the depreciated normal schedule, but in year 11 under this bill, that permanent registration would cost $1,591. So you can see that over time, that $11,000 difference that starts out really high over time, it really gets down to it's about $200 difference on the permanent registration. That just gives you guys, I think, some context in the bill. Again, I think what that does though too is it drives us to the question of if relief from the cost of the registration is what we're seeking, the bill may not address that because it's outside kind of the scope of what we're talking about. The bill does, however, have merit in the idea that it does simplify your life if you own a lot of these vehicles. And it does potentially simplify life for the treasurers within the office as far as registering these vehicles. And I think they can speak to some of those efficiencies and maybe some of the upside they may see in a bill like this. Now, Mr. Chairman, to the fiscal note, I believe you did cover that very well for us on Tuesday. And I think one of the things I did want the committee to know is when we get a fiscal note, we're making an awful lot of assumptions. And in this case, we made the assumption that we knew the population of vehicles that were eligible. And in order to make it easy, we just assumed, hey, if this is a good program, at least 50% of the people will partake in it. That adoption rate is probably high, but again, it gives you some magnitude. I think what it does show, though, is by going to a system like this, in those first years that vehicles are eligible, you're actually going to see a spike in revenue, right? You're collecting 5 years worth of registration on those units versus 1. What happens, though, is over time, right, year 6 and 7, then you've completely lost all revenue from those vehicles. But at the same time, you've got a new group of vehicles every single year that are adding into this group. So I can't really determine what the true fiscal impact was. What we wanted to illustrate to you guys is that there's a spike, and then on the back end, you're going to start seeing a decrease. I don't know that it ever offsets. I couldn't project where those two lines are going to meet, but I think you just need to know that concept, and that's what we were trying to illustrate in that fiscal note. I do believe that there's some merit in the convenience of doing this. I think it is a little bit of an explanation or an exploration beyond simply the vehicle registration that we're talking about. But with that, I believe we've covered the bill. I think the bringer of the bill had a good summary of the bill. With that, I'd certainly entertain questions and allow Ms. Bruckner to cover the amendments if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Rossetti. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rossetti, do we have any idea how long the average vehicle stays on the road?
Mr. Rossetti.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft, it is a complicated question to answer. What I can say, though, is again, 61% of the vehicles that are registered in Wyoming are at least 11 years old or older. And in our database, that dates all the way back to 1900. So we have got things between 1900 and 2013 in that universe of vehicles.
Any further questions? Representative Wiley.
Mr. Rossetti, could you go a little further on the 25-year plate? What did you say earlier? Pioneer
Oh,
plate.
like Mr. Rossetti. Leave the light on that.
Sorry.
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Wiley, there is, for vehicles that are 25 years or older, there is a class of plate that's called the Pioneer plate. They're classic antique cars. Now, the intent of those plates is not to be daily drivers. Those are more for like a classic vehicle that you'd use to go to car shows and things like that. So what it requires is, this isn't your daily commuter. This is occasionally going to be on the road to go to parades or car shows and things like that. So you pay a one-time registration fee of $10 and that plate never expires. So that would be similar really to what we're looking at here. It's just a different fee structure.
Thank you.
You just had to open that one to begin, Representative Wiley. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this may be a question even for the committee, but worried about the long-term finances. Would it be wise to take 4 of the 5 years worth of the permanent plate registration and put it into another trust fund to fund future road projects?
Representative Smith. So as Mr. Rossetti was just mentioning, the split between the county and the state portion does go to the state highway fund. So it would be all that construction project. It would just be split. Are you recommending that or suggesting that we might just take the 4 out of the 5 years and just put that all in there as opposed to splitting it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something along those lines.
I think that's something for the committee to consider. I think constructionally that would be maybe a little bit of a headache for the administration of that, but I don't know quite how that would ultimately go down between the county treasurers and YDOT. So Ms. Bruckner, with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you and we'll have you please introduce yourself as well as run through the amendment for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lacey Bruckner, YDOT Compliance and Investigation. And you have before you our proposed amendments for House Bill 154. We did discuss these with the County Treasurers Association, and the representatives there that we spoke with concurred with what we have here. And really what we have here is more administrative suggested changes to make it a little more effective for the department and the county treasurers to administer this. With that, the first suggested change that we have is on page 1, starting at line 9. And that, Mr. Chairman, those are 2 statutes that we identified in reviewing this bill that could be added to this bill with some revisions. And what both of those would do would give YDOT the authority to design a unique plate for this permanent registration that would be easily identified by law enforcement here, law enforcement in other jurisdictions, and also by tolling authorities or parking facilities in other jurisdictions, that they would be able to identify that plate as a permanent plate and the numbering system for it. What adding these statutes would also do would give us the ability to create a permanent plate that isn't required to be replaced every 8 years like our other license plates are. The Pioneer plate that Mr. Rossetti addressed earlier, that one is a permanent plate. It is never replaced either unless it's damaged or lost or stolen. So that the addition of statute 31-2-204B and statute 31-2-213B basically gives us statutory authority to design this plate and the numbering system for this plate so that it can be unique and identified as a permanent registration and doesn't create a situation of duplicate numbers with our other license plates that we have available in the state. The second suggested amendment that we have is on page 2, lines 8 and 9. In discussing this a little bit with the County Treasurers Association, we would suggest striking starting on line 8, or if applicable, and if the owner chooses, and replacing those words with unless registering. So that would read annually, not later than the last day of the annual registration month, comma, unless registering permanently under Wyoming statute 31-2-206 and through Q. So we felt that that would maybe avoid some confusion, with the registration timelines that are set forth in that paragraph in the statute. That's the reason for that suggested change. The next amendment that we have starts on page 2, line 11. And this is where we would recommend adding statute 31-2-204. That statute addresses the issuance of certificates of registration and license plates. Through the middle of that paragraph, we would recommend adding permanently registered vehicles. As you can see there already, the license plates for dealer plates, forestry plates, motorcycles, MPVs, and trailers are already included here. And what this language does is gives the department the ability to design the plate and use an identifier for that particular type of vehicle in lieu of the bucking horse. Sometimes if it's on a smaller plate like MPVs or motorcycles or light trailers, there's not room. So these plates are already established that way. So adding the permanently registered plate there would give the department the ability to use an identifier instead of the bucking horse like we do with these other plates, so that if you were to get a permanent registration for your motorcycle, that's a smaller plate, there may not be room to add an identifier indicating this is a permanent motorcycle plate. and including the bucking horse as well. So your motorcycle plate, your light trailer plate, your multi-purpose vehicle plate now do not have that. This would just allow the permanent version of those license plates also to not have that. Going down a little further into that paragraph, we have recommended adding language that specifically sets out the design of the permanent license plate. This is also set out similar already in this statute for the Pioneer plates. And what we would suggest is just saying that the permanent registration license plate shall bear no date, just like the Pioneer plate bears no date. That there's an inscription on it that says permanent so that it's identified as a permanent license plate, and giving the department the ability to design the plate to avoid duplicate registrations or issues with other jurisdictions running our registration numbers for permanent registration and causing duplicate plate issues with the tolling authorities and the parking facilities and things like that. The next suggested recommendation that we have on page 2 of the handout is on page 4, line 9 of the bill. And I think Mr. Rossetti addressed this briefly. This section of the bill talks about the person who chooses to obtain a permanent registration paying 5 times the applicable fees under statute 31-3-101A and B. Mr. Rossetti indicated that subparagraph A covers your county registration fees and your state registration fees. The department, in looking through 31-3-101B, some of the subparagraphs in that statute wouldn't qualify for this permanent plate because this bill excludes commercial vehicles, and there are some subparagraphs in there that address reduced registration for commercial vehicles. Subparagraph B also addresses registration reductions or exemptions for agricultural use of vehicles, logging, towing, some fee exemptions or reductions, for veteran plates and for Native American plates. So while a few of the subparagraphs in section B might be applicable, it would be very difficult possibly to apply the permanent registration fees to the reduced or exempt fees for those particular registration types. And in addition to that, it may not be beneficial for the resident to apply for a permanent registration in this type of registration and pay an additional $87.50 administration fee on top of an exempt plate to start with. So that is the reason that we would recommend striking and B from that section. The next recommended amendment that we have is on page 5, line 5. And that is to insert into the bill statute 31-2-213B. And this section gives the department the authority now to have a permanent plate that isn't replaced every 8 years for Pioneer plates and dealer plates. This suggested language that we have would just add these permanent plates to that as well, so that they're not required to be replaced every 8 years like our other license plates are, so that a person can keep this plate indefinitely and only replace it if it becomes lost, stolen, or damaged to the point where it's not legible. Okay. And then the last suggestion that the department has for changes maybe to this bill starts on page 6, line 5. This section, this subparagraph of this bill now states that the license plate expires when the owner of the vehicle sells the vehicle, that they're to remove the plate from the vehicle, and that they no longer, or they get no credit towards the registration of another vehicle. That's established. So what we're suggesting here is that we also include language after vehicle on line 5 to clarify that that license plate itself cannot be transferred to another like vehicle, that once your ownership of that vehicle terminates, so does that plate. And all you can really do with it is maybe hang it on your wall, because you're not able to transfer it to another like vehicle. And that would just be a clarification, making it easier to administer that and not have to go transfer that number to another vehicle and keep it just a basic permanent plate and not something that turns into like a prestige plate or a preferred number plate or something like that. At the very bottom of the handout, we just set out what that entire subparagraph E would look like, inserting this language on page 6, line 5, if that's helpful. And that takes us through the department's suggested amendments, if you so desire, and I would stand for any questions. Thank you.
Fantastic work. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
amount of work you put into this. Truly, truly appreciated. And even the sponsor of the bill behind there is shaking his head. Thank you. So, committee, I've got 2 questions here. Let's go with Vice Chair O'Hearn and then Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was talking to the bringer of the bill. So if I registered as a permanent plate on my 12th year and the truck blew up, all my money is lost, correct?
Ms. Bruckner,
It
Mr.
can't be
Chairman,
transferred.
Representative O'Hearn, yes. That would be true, the way this is written.
Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you guys, Taylor, have you guys looked at maybe putting the years out at year 15, vehicles for 15 years or 20 years even?
Before you guys have to answer that, just so we're aware that.
We're on the amendment.
Well, no, you're okay. It's more of that's a policy decision for the body.
Okay.
And most of the time, the agencies will not weigh in on policy
Right,
decisions
Exactly.
on
Yes.
whether or not that wants to go in. But if you guys. would
I
like
guess maybe, would you know the percentage?
That, okay.
That's what I want to know.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, thanks for answering that for me, Chairman. But actually, no, I don't have that readily available, but it'd be easy enough to pull. I only have the 11-year just based on the original drafting of the bill.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. So I've got a couple and I'm hoping that you might have the information, but you may not. My first one is I see no penalty provision in this. And so I see no situation in which somebody pops off this plate after the vehicle's totaled and they throw it on their car that looks like it's 8 years old or whatever that case may be. But I'm guessing there's somewhere else in statute that we have the misuse of a current plate. So can you answer that for me?
Mr. Chairman, yes, the penalty provisions for registration violations are all under 31-4-101. And there is a section in there for invalid registration, no registration, or failure to display your registration. So that would definitely be covered in one of those 3 paragraphs in 31-4.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. You have a question? Representative Smith.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment gives you authority to design and all that kind of stuff. Would there be provision to design separate like handicap plate if some of these people are older or permanently disabled or anything like that, or even have a sticker to go on it?
Ms. Bruckner and or Mr. Rossetti?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Smith, I think with the permanent registration language in the amendment that we've suggested, that would give us the ability to design a plate for that purpose as well. That is a permanent plate. It's pretty broad in covering any type of vehicle that would qualify for a permanent plate. So I think that would be, we'd be able to do that with this language. Thank you.
Any further questions? You've also raised the hairs on the back of my neck by potentially removing the bucking horse and rider. It's a very, very serious opportunity here, but I understand where you're coming from. Yes, Ms. Bruckner.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. That would be for permanent plates for vehicles that qualify for permanent plates that already have license plates that don't include the bucking horse and rider now, sort like your motorcycle plates and your MPV plates. So thank you.
My last question that I have for you is you talked about B at the very beginning here on 31.3.101B and the registration portion there. And I believe you said commercial, and that was one of my questions that I wanted to make sure that I am completely clear on, is that this would not apply then if we strike that B, we would not have the availability to permanently license commercial vehicles. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, committee, any further questions for YDOT? Seeing none, I do know that we have two county treasurers. If you can go ahead and let Ms. Parvasini in, as well as Mr. Cowan. We'll go ahead and hear from Ms. Parvasini first. Good afternoon, Ms.
Okay.
Parvasini.
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. So just wanted to throw a couple of numbers at you. I'm Emily Parvasini, Sublette County Treasurer, here on behalf of the Sublette County Treasurers Association. So we talked about this bill the last day or so, just kind of the ins and outs of it and where it might affect us. And as far as administratively, the fact that we wouldn't have to do annual registrations on some of these old vehicles would probably benefit all of the counties. Financially, it will probably affect us some, but as Mr. Rossetti said, you know, if you've got vehicles this year that fall under that eligibility, then next year you're going to have more vehicles falling under that eligibility. And I actually looked at what Sublette County has for vehicles that would be eligible, and that includes trailers and motorcycles and MPVs with the current language at 11 years, and we would have 8,931 vehicles that would be eligible. If you were to move that to say 20 years, we would have 6,353 registrations that would be eligible. We always kind of laugh that Wyoming is where old vehicles go to die. And that is very true, Mr. Chairman. We have a lot of very old vehicles. And the other portion of this is that I think the bringer of the bill, his intention was to save some folks money, the elderly and things like that. So I have an old vehicle. I drive a 1999 Chevy Tahoe, and my registration every year is $181. It's based on that MSRP from when that vehicle was brand new 25 years ago. With this bill, if I was to buy a permanent plate, my registration for that one time would be $850. So it doesn't really, I don't think, benefit the elderly so much as it would certainly benefit people with old vehicles. You know, and there's a lot of people that have trucks that they only use for plowing in the wintertime. They have vehicles they only use during hunting season. So they might get 40 years worth of use out of this vehicle, or you might hit a deer and crater the vehicle tomorrow. I mean, that's certainly a risk that all of us take as being Wyoming drivers. We all know that the life of your vehicle, it has a lot of things against it. But I do feel that this is a good bill. I liked all the amendments that YDOT brought. Some of those things are things that are very important, like removing B from page 4 of the bill, because some of those items include like veteran plates that are already exempt and then are backfilled by the state to the counties. We haven't had any registration costs inflated since 2017, as Mr. Rossetti said, with the increase of the state fees. And the price of registration in Sublette County is exactly the same in Teton County and Converse County. You don't pay any difference depending on the county that you're in. It's the same fee everywhere. And there's going to be some counties that will use this a lot, and then other counties that might not, just because the demographics and the the amount of money that people have the capability of making in some counties is different than in other counties. But Mr. Chairman, I like this bill, and I think as far as the Treasurers Association is with those couple of tweaks, I think we're all in favor of it as well.
All right, committee, any questions for Ms. Parvasini? You do, yes, Representative Overhealer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You don't happen to have the figures on 25 years right there at your fingertips, do you?
Give me just a second. I'm here at the office and I can pull it up. So if we say vehicles that are older than 2001, would that be a fair number?
Sure.
Sure.
So for my county, that would bring that number down to 5,288. It's still a very large number.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Parvasini. We appreciate you and the treasurer's work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And it looks like, do we still have Mr. Cowan available? Not on this one. Oh, it is 277. If I would open my eyes and read the rest of that, that would. It does look like you're here, Mr. Cowan. Do you want to speak on this bill, or are you looking for number 277?
277, but I will make a comment. We did have some conversation in our office. Mark Cowan, Sweetwater County Treasurer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did have some conversation in our office from people who do have low number plates. Of course, that's a big issue in Wyoming. And a lot of the folks want to be able to maintain that low number plate. So that definitely was an issue. If they were going to buy a permanent plate, they would want to be able to transfer that low number plate to another vehicle. So that was just a comment from our offices.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. And we'll bring you back in for 277 when we get there. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to open this back up to in-person testimony from public. Looks like Mr. Riemann here. Jeremiah, if you would, please join us. Anybody else who's interested, please come on up and take the seats and we'll go from there.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeremiah Riemann. I serve as the Executive Director of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. I just wanted to say that we certainly support this concept and the evolution towards this. But the Sublette County Treasurer just highlighted one of the concerns that has been expressed by a number of our smaller counties who have a significant number of older vehicles and don't perhaps have the turnover that you might see in a county like Laramie County. In fact, one of my counties, when they were looking at this bill, said, hey, we're a third world county. We have, the vast majority of our plates would fall into this. And certainly they understand that there would be an uptick in registration on the front end, assuming people wanted to take advantage of this. But they are concerned about those back end numbers after year 5. And yes, there are people that would come onto that list every year, but that list is probably smaller in many of those counties. So I don't know how to solve that other than to perhaps say that we need to look at something higher than the 11-year time frame to address some of those concerns in those counties. But otherwise, again, we do support the concept and where this is headed. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Riemann? Thank you, Jeremiah. Appreciate you joining us. Anybody else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring the bill back to the dais. Committee. What's your pleasure? Moved by Berger, and I believe I heard some mumbling over here from Representative Stivar. So, it was Representative Nemec. So we'll call that a second. Committee. Let's go ahead. This is a pretty lengthy bill. We do have some information in here specifically from YDOT. We can either move this all as one amendment if you would like, or, okay, so I'll go ahead and allow that. Anybody who wants to move?
Motion to move the amendment that YDOT brought.
Okay.
Second.
Representative O'Hearn moved and second by Stivar. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Question being called. All those in favor of proposed amendment by YDOT, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. All right, that has been adopted. Diana, do you have a copy of that already? Okay. All right. Committee will run through this quickly now that we've got the majority of this through. Let's go ahead and just start off page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Let's go ahead and go with Representative Wiley.
Line 12. I would like to make the amendment to go from 11 to 20 years.
Motion is to strike 11th and insert 20th. Need a second? Seconded by Stivar. Any discussion from the committee? Representative Pendergraft.
Looking at the same concept, and I was thinking about 16 on the numbers we got in testimony. At 11 years, there were 8,000 vehicles. At 20 years, there were 6,000 vehicles in that particular county. I'm guessing somewhere around 16 years, it'd be about 7,000, maybe 7,400, somewhere in there. It just seems to me that if I got a 20-year-old vehicle and I got to go and it's going to cost me $1,000 to get a permanent plate, and I don't know how long it's going to last, we're diminishing the intent of the bill, which was in part to save some money. So I guess my inclination is to go for about 16.
Okay, Representative Obermueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was thinking that the intent of it was to clean up that people had a bunch of old vehicles, obsolete, hanging around their yard. And they were tired of paying continued taxes on really old vehicles. So with that in mind, the 20 years sounds good. I think 25 sounds better. And because it ties into the other part of these statutes with the Pioneer plate being 25 years, seems like a nice nexus there. So just for discussion purposes.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, I would say that I would echo a very similar sentiment to Representative Obermuller here, that I actually have scribbled on my notes here that I would like to, and I may make the motion depending upon what this looks like, but actually like to get rid of the Pioneer plates if we do something like this. And I don't know, the discussion was brought forward. I don't know if any of you guys recognize what those are, but they have to be 25 years or older. And then they're registered one time for a $10 fee. Now, the problem is I've seen those driving around in my community left and right being used as a daily driver. And it's probably not something that our law enforcement officers are, watching out for on a regular basis. It's not their top priority. And so it's a tough law to enforce. So I kind of like the idea of tying it back to this and still repealing that, but Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For years, I had Pioneer plates because I had a parade vehicle, 1946 Chevy. And the intent, as was given there, was that these are used just for special occasions. You take that vehicle out to a show and shine or something, and that's kind of there. I do think that the way that vehicles have come since I had mine 40 years ago, maybe that 25 years for Pioneer plates could be extended to get it more to an antique vehicle mystique. But my personal vehicle is my daily driver, somewhere around 17, hence the idea for 16. No, seriously, my personal vehicle that I drive all the time is about 20 years old. It's a daily driver. I don't know how many more years it's going to last. If we get it too old, to me, it defeats the purpose, but I think 20 is reasonable.
Okay. Representative Smith.
If we go with the 15, 16-year area, they're still paying for up to 20 years because of the 5 years. So.
All right, committee, let's go ahead and call question on the motion. The motion is to strike 11th and insert 20th. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? No. Okay, that motion is adopted. All right, let's go ahead and move over to page 4. Any changes on page 4? Any changes on page 5? And page 6.
Question.
I will make a motion. And there will be needing to be some conforming amendments. I'm going to try to get my my last dig at this particular piece of legislation that has been enacted. I would move to repeal 31-4-101. And with the second, I'll explain that. Representative Obermueller, thank you for the second. That is not in this bill. Ladies and gentlemen, what that is the Pioneer Plate. And what I'm doing with that is eliminating the Pioneer Plate from consideration, that if you're going to be able to permanently register a vehicle in this state, you can certainly do that. And this would eliminate the availability of, and I'm getting a question. They tell me I can't do this.
Mr. Chairman, I think
Have I got
based
the
on your
wrong- I've
discussion,
got
I
the
think
wrong
you were, I think, repealing the fines for improper
I did,
registration.
yeah.
I think Ms. Bruckner will pull you the appropriate
I've got it,
reference.
31-2-223. There we go. That's much better.
Sorry about that, sir.
So my amended motion is to repeal 31-2-223. Sorry, I had two different notes here. My thought on this, though, gentlemen, is that we would be putting on a permanent registration, allowing this to happen. I personally have a very big problem with the $10 plates being able to drive around. They pay that one time and it's all over and done with. The enforcement of them is almost impossible. It's been a thorn in my side since I joined this committee 7 years ago. So that's where I'm at. Any discussion? Representative Pendergraft.
Mr. Chairman, I respectfully disagree. Being a car enthusiast, there is a certain mystique to having that Pioneer Plate. And I realize there are a few folks that abuse that. Most of them, quite frankly, are people I think that are struggling to pay anything, and they see it as just a way to keep it going, which is why I think we should seriously consider moving that back 25 years to say 40 or 50 years. So it really is an antique vehicle.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair O'Hearn.
Yeah, if you only waited 5 years, you would save $1,500 and pay $10. So, yeah, we need to move that date back somehow, and I don't mind this.
Representative Berger.
I concur. I'd like to move that date. I'd like to keep the Pioneer but move it back to, 40 years. I don't know. Because those vehicles, those are the ones we use for parades, and there's a nostalgia to it.
Representative Pendergraft.
Is that appropriate to consider, Mr. Chairman, as a interim topic? Or we?
I'll just say good luck. I've tried 5 out of the 7 years to work this particular issue. And frankly, to be honest with you, what it boils down to is you move it to 40 years. 40 years right now looks different than what it would be in 40 more years, and whether or not that would be the case. And what we consider classic cars right now is not what was considered classic back when my dad was alive. So my intention on this is the idea that I understand where everybody's going about the Pioneer Plate. I just think that the $10 and the authority to get a permanently registered license plate fits that in. So with that, all in favor of repealing 31-2-223, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
All right, let's do show of hands. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
No.
Oh, 4. Okay, and all those opposed? All right, that fails. Any further amendments? Sensing you're ready to vote, question being called. Diana, will you please call roll on House Bill 154 as amended?
Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
No.
That's 8 ayes, 1 no, do pass with amendments.
Thank you so much. And Representative Banks, I'll have you work on carrying this to the floor. Does that work? Okay. All right. Thank you, committee. Let's go ahead and move on. Next bill for our consideration is, I believe it's Mr. Representative Conrad here on 199. Representative Conrad, if you'd like to take a seat and join us here. The floor is yours, good sir.
Chairman Brown, thank you. Members of the committee. It's a privilege to be here in front of you. For those who haven't met me, Representative John Conrad, House District 19. In my short time here, Mr. Chairman, I will share with you that I do not believe in the saying, the small little bill. So with that being said, let me preface that with House Bill 199. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill primarily is a replication and a public acknowledgement of plagiarism that I have borrowed from Representative Stiver as it relates to vehicle license plates. As you're likely aware, if you're not, let me share with you just a few statistics. As we look at new cases in Wyoming, specifically as it relates to cancer, one of the challenges that we have when we talk about an incident rate, and this is annually per 100,000. Breast cancer is the second most leading incident rate in the state, only surpassed by prostate. You're looking at about 113.6 per every 100,000 people who will develop prostate cancer. But surprisingly, unfortunately, breast cancer is at 113. So it's a very, very large item. I think all of us probably have known somebody or struggled with breast cancer. And I will share with you, this is not specifically a women's issue. For every 100 cases of breast cancer, it affects a male. Men develop breast cancer as well. So my goal and intent and objectives with this bill is primarily to, again, replicate what has been done earlier with women veterans, and more importantly, to allow them to apply at a fee of $5 an hour or $5 a license plate annually, a small upside down pink ribbon. I think most of us are familiar with as it identifies breast cancer. I will share with the committee that trademark of the upside down ribbon in pink is not trademarked by any measure or means. It is a public symbol. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I can walk us through the bill if that's your preference.
Committee, any questions at this point? Representative Conrad, I don't, unless you have a serious inkling to walk through the entire bill, I don't think we need to. I think you've explained it fairly well, but it's your pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be forever indebted if I didn't have to walk through the bill.
Then we will go ahead and skip back, but I do have a question here from Vice Chair O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I buy a plate, it's good for 7 to 8 years, and I get a sticker each year, would I have to get a new $5 breast cancer sticker? Or if I put it in the lower left like it says, wouldn't that be good for 8 years?
Representative Conrad.
Mr. Chairman, Representative O'Hearn, no, this, in terms of your registration every year, you would be required to provide that $5, again, donation to apply for a new sticker, whether that was to deplete the other one or not. The primary purpose of that, Representative O'Hearn, is to determine at the end of a 3-year period, primarily, as an example, how many people are actually taking advantage of this awareness, such that, similar to Representative Stiver's bill, we can evaluate at the end of the 3 or 5 years, how many people are really buying into this, for lack of a better word, such that we can determine if a plate specifically is justified.
Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once you get on my bill, once you buy the female veterans takes that sticker, it's good for till the plate expires when we go into a new plate. It'd be similar to this. Once they buy that sticker, that it's good for the 8 years they have that plate.
Mr. Chairman?
Is that a question?
Is that
what you're asking? Okay.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
That's what it, to me, and yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Representative Conrad.
Or rather, Chairman Brown and Representative Stiver, that's a great question. On page 2, what has denoted, at least on page or line 5, is applications or decals under this subsection shall be made annually to the county treasurer. The only desire in that, Representative Stiver, is to determine how many each year, or to obviously determine, is the campaign working? Is there 100 in 2023 versus 300 in 2024, or is there a decline? So I'm amenable to any amendment that is respected.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Conrad, I am curious, there seems to be a little bit of difference between what you're doing and what Representative Stiver is doing. His is for an individual to commemorate having gone through a certain ordeal, I would call it. Yours is, and this is in the form of a question, is yours then, anybody can buy this sticker? It's not for victims of breast cancer. It's just for anybody that wants to buy that and contribute. So it's like an I gave or I voted sticker.
Representative Conrad?
Chairman Brown, Representative Pendergraft, that's a great question. To your question specifically, yes, anyone could buy that. So if I had a sister in, say, Texas, who actually was a survivor, or more importantly, succumbed by breast cancer, at least I could denote that remembrance of her. So in this case, to your example, yes, it would be I voted, or analogous to I recognize breast cancer and I'm providing more awareness to it.
You have a question? Vice Chair O'Hearn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where do the fees go that the county treasurer's office collect?
Similar to Representative Stivar's bill, within the treasurer, or rather within the county itself.
Any further discussion for Representative Conrad? Okay, I feel like there's a place to put the bucking horse and rider on this too, but we'll see.
I can assure you that this will be pink.
We will make that work. Representative
Chairman
Conrad?
One quick question, if I may.
Certainly.
I believe Representative Stiver had a question for me.
Representative Stiver? No. You're good? Okay.
I feel good.
All right. Thank you, Representative Conrad. We'll go ahead and open this up to the department. Mr. Rossetti? We got the whole contingent. All the YDOT's here today. All right.
Mr. Chairman, Taylor Rossetti again, Support Services Administrator. For this one, I have Shannon DeGrazio up here, and she works in the motor vehicle section. I do think that the line of questioning here is actually, I think, something that we were going to bring up. I'll certainly be here in support, and I'll let Shannon go ahead and give some testimony.
Ms. DeGrazio, please introduce yourself and the floor is yours.
Shannon DeGrazio with YDOT Motor Vehicle Services. YDOT has the capability of printing these decals should this bill pass. However, I was questioning, that's what I had actually for questioning on the wording of it, because that annual fee goes to YDOT and not the counties.
Okay. So as it stands, it looks like we will need to address that committee. Anything further, Ms. DeGrazio?
Not that I'm aware of. I stand for questions.
Similar,
though.
okay, absolutely. Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But wouldn't it make better sense if they buy it one time and it's good for the life of the plate? Because you'd be putting more stickers on every year, correct?
Correct.
Ms. DeGrazio.
Mr. Chairman, yes, it would absolutely make more sense.
Representative Smith.
What is the administrative cost and or the cost to manufacture these stickers?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Smith, we were going to go with the $5 fee for the cost of the decal, the processing of the application and the mailing to the customer.
So it's right at that $5.
Right.
So this would basically be a break even.
Yes,
for the
Mr. Chairman,
department.
if we didn't charge the $5, it would not be lucrative.
Okay, Mr. Rossetti.
Mr. Chairman, I do think, as the bringer mentioned, if the intent here is to have some donation capacity or something back to the group, we certainly, I think, could work through that with the committee and the bringer if that were his intent. I do believe, as worded here, it is very similar to the bill that Representative Stivar brought, and that $5 is really just to cover the administrative fee to create the decal to then go on the plates. We certainly could talk through whichever the pleasure is of the committee.
Committee, any questions for YDOT? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rossetti, Mr. Grazio. Thank you guys so much. All right, we'll go ahead and open this up for any public testimony. Seeing nobody rushing to the mics. Okay, and 277 is the next one, correct? So still don't have anybody. Okay. All right, committee, we'll bring this back up to the dais. What's the pleasure of the committee? Moved by Representative O'Hearn, seconded by Wiley. Committee, I will just, I'll take prerogative real quick. One of the things that we do that I've seen in the recent past with these plates is there's usually language in here that we would probably need to look at if we're looking to do a donation portion of this, something that would make a donation and hold on to it, and it goes back to a certain portion. There is some statutes specifically like with the UW license plate, some of those that we could look at bringing, whether we do it committee of the whole or whatever the case is. Otherwise, it would be the committee's prerogative and let you guys decide what we would like to do as far as the annual license on this or the annual fee on this, and then getting a new sticker every year, or if we would like to amend that to being a single independent sticker once every 8 years. So Representative Stivar.
That's what, that'd be my amendment, is make it one time for 8 years. And so over that 8-year period, if, you know, as they start collecting the data, you know, they sell 1,000 of them in that 8 years, or that 5 years, then bring back to say, look, let's do a permanent license plate, because a permanent license plate would be permanent, or not permanent, but in the cycle for the every 8 years.
Okay, so we have some discussion, and that's fine. So what I would like us to do is try to find a way that we either word that or strike the language that we have in here. Representative Conrad, you had your hand.
Chairman Brown, thank you. The first question I want to address is specifically as it relates to donations. This is no intent to provide any donations, because I think that encumbers, more importantly, makes this more cumbersome, I should say, respect to donations, where they go, et cetera, so forth. And with respect to Representative Stivar's potential amendment, I support that 100%.
Okay. Representative Berger.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so I'm thinking, you know, I was thinking about a donation piece, but this is more of an awareness piece to get eyes on these vehicles with the sticker, to aware people that, hey, we're still out there and you can go donate at other places. Is that correct?
I believe that's
Yeah.
exactly what we're looking at doing, Representative Conrad.
Chairman Brown, Representative Berger, that's exactly right. If a person wants to donate through United Way or some other entity to the awareness of breast cancer, whether that's national or the Kopechnik campaign or the local health department, that's up to them. But this is just an awareness specifically, as we talked about earlier, as it relates to women veterans. Thank you.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I approach this with a little bit of trepidation and some caution, because are we setting a precedent where every group, every organization for any particular cause is then going to want their sticker? And are we opening ourselves up to chaos? I do recognize the fact that the back of a vehicle, for example, is much larger than a license plate, and people are quite prone to feel that they're aware of whatever organization or thing that they're and that's the only objection I have to this idea. I just think we might be opening up a can of worms there.
Okay. Any further discussions and or topics? Questions?
Is there a memo on the floor?
I'm working on it. Yeah, so there's nothing on the floor right now. There was no movement, just because it was
So that is still
general discussion. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Representative Obermuller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not clear on, I know there was a question about the $5 that it would go to YDOT, and somehow there's an issue surrounding how the money moves. If someone could clarify that piece, there may be an amendment surrounding that.
Mr. Rossetti, I actually had a similar thought on this. My question, and it's actually more of a statement, you can just let me know if I'm correct or not, that this would apply similarly to the other information that we have, and the county treasurers would be remitting this back to the state, just as they do with like the EV tag or whatever that case may be. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I apologize if we confuse the body. I believe the bringer just mentioned that it would go to the treasurer. It would go to the state based on the way fees are collected. I think if that's the intent, that's already what would happen. So I don't think that there's a need to do an amendment. That we were just trying to clarify that that's actually what would happen in practice.
Right. All right, committee, I am working on, Representative Smith.
I was just gonna make a motion.
Okay, please, by all means.
I make a motion to table this because People have I think it's too much administrative work for YDOT. And if people want to support this, they're welcome to put bumper stickers on the back of their car.
Okay, if there is a motion.
I would second that.
There's a motion and a second. Gentlemen, this is a non-debatable motion. So I will just go ahead and put this up for a vote. All those in favor of tabling, do you have a time frame? Indefinitely?
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely, okay. For proposing indefinitely, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
That motion fails. So we will go ahead and finish working this. I do have an amendment, and I think this will clean up exactly what everybody's looking for. So I would move to on page 2, line 5, starting at applications through line 6, all of line 6, and through line 7 through the word article. So we would be striking the sentence that says applications for decals under this subsection shall be annually made to the county treasurer as provided by this article. We would be striking all of that. And in the same amendment, I would be going down to line 19 and inserting language that says no decals shall be issued for renewal of license plates. And that's the motion. I would need a second to discuss. Seconded from Representative Berger. So I believe that gets us to what we're looking for on as far as making it a one-time annual fee and then becoming no decals from the county treasurer needing to be issued more than one time unless it's a new license plate. So committee, any discussion? Sensing the urge to vote, all those in favor of proposed amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill? Question being called. Diana, would you please call roll on House Bill 199 as amended?
Okay, Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraph,
No.
Representative Smith,
No.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes and 2 noes. Do pass with amendments.
Representative Conrad, just so you're aware, the conversation that you heard on this committee is going to be very, very similar out there on the floor. So
Chairman, I look forward to it.
thank you so much for being down here. Representative Larson, we have your bill up next. I do believe we've got time to work it. And that is House Bill 277. And let's go ahead and pull that up. Representative Larson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Today I bring you House Bill 277. It's another bill that brings us into the 21st century with regards to vehicle registration, e-certificate, and grace period. So this is pertaining to statute 31-2-204. You can see that at the bottom of page 1. As you flip over to page 2, at the bottom of that paragraph, it just says the certificate of registration as it pertains to a vehicle issued by the county treasurer may be provided in an electronic form. And then as it pertains to 31-4-101 on page 2, it expands Romanet 2 to include validation stickers. And gives a grace period of 30 days. And I'll explain what this all does. So first point is the certificate of registration can be basically emailed to the person who renews their registration online. And that counts as a valid form of registration. And the question has come up that if someone gets pulled over and they just have the registration on their phone, does that mean the officer has to take their cell phone? But nothing prevents them from printing that document and keeping it in their glove box on their own. So just wanted to put that out there before the question arose. And then expanding to validation stickers and like giving the 30-day grace period allows time for the county treasurer to mail the stickers when they're renewing from a remote location, such as like Bear Oil in Sweetwater County. They don't have to worry about those validation stickers for 30 days as long as they've paid for the registration. So that's the explanation of the bill. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Pretty simple bill, straightforward. Thank you, Representative Larson. Any questions for Representative Larson? Representative Wiley.
Representative Larson, are you telling me that this could save people time and money from having to go down to the courthouse?
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Wiley, yes.
Any further questions? Yes, Representative Berger.
Chairman, Mr. Larson, are you telling me that we can't walk down to the courthouse anymore, or we can?
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Berger, that is still an option. You can still go in person and do this. It's just expanding the ability of the treasurers to do this in electronic form if they'd like to.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, so my question is, I'm guessing you've worked with the Treasurers Association and or discussed this at least a little bit. My question is, we authorize this. Is the County Treasurers Association going to be coming back next year saying, hey, look, you guys authorize this. We have a huge request for this. We'd like to do this, but this is going to cost us exorbitant amount of money. Therefore, legislature, you authorize this. Can you please give us some money to do this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't foresee that happening. These registration certificates are already generated in a digital format and they print them on site. So it's basically just saving a step. They can just, or maybe adding a step for emailing, but it's saving the step of printing. So I don't see it causing a problem. And like you said, I did work with the county treasurers and they helped me draft this bill. So they're in support of it.
Okay. Any further questions? All right. Thank you, Representative Larson. Much appreciated. YDOT, we're back again. Ms. Bruckner, please just state your name for the record again on this bill.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Lacey Bruckner, YDOT Compliance and Investigation. And in reviewing this bill from an administrative standpoint on behalf of the department, we see no problems or concerns with administering it how it's written now. It wouldn't cause any drastic changes or anything in the way we issue our license plates, temporary permits, or validation stickers to the county treasurers. So it seems fine administratively for us, and I would stand for any questions. Thank you.
Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Bruckner.
Lacey Bruckner.
Bruckner. Ms. Bruckner, thank you. On the back of this bill, it says fiscal note, and it says no fiscal or personnel impact. Would you concur with that statement?
Ms. Bruckner.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, I believe so. What this bill does is add a grace period to the time that a person would have to apply their license plates or stickers to the back of their vehicle before they could be cited for that by law enforcement. So it doesn't affect the cost of the stickers. It doesn't affect the cost of producing the plates. It doesn't affect the cost of issuing a temporary permit in the case of a vehicle dealer or a county treasurer. So I don't see that there would be any additional costs relating to that. It's just the matter of having a longer time period, I guess, to place those items on the back of your vehicle before you could be cited. Thank you.
Any further questions? Ms. Bruckner, I do have a question on that. I'm thinking, okay, somebody, let's just use me, I get pulled over and I haven't registered. I have not renewed my registration at this point, but I have that 30-day grace period. Does this allow me I guess what I'm trying to think of is, it says validation stickers. Should it say validation stickers with valid registration? And my thought on this is that you could have that 30-day grace period, and that's basically what this is doing, to have the sticker on there. But you would have that electronic remittance from the county treasurer on your registration.
Mr. Chairman, yes. So what this is, with the way this language is worded on page 3, line 1, it states that you have to display the registration, the temporary permit, or the validation sticker within 30 days of issuance. So this only applies if you have already purchased that registration or renewed that registration online or even by mail. It has to be issued. It has to have been purchased and renewed already. You just have 30 days to take what you've already paid for
Okay,
and place it on the back of your vehicle.
perfect. Thank you. All right, any further questions? Thank you, Ms. Breckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll open this up for public comment in the room first. Any public comment? I don't get to hear from any one of you 3 ladies today. All right, if you can go ahead and bring in Mr. Cowan again, please. Mr. Cowan, welcome back to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Mark Cowan, Sweetwater County Treasurer. I'm speaking on behalf of House Bill 277. This bill does a number of things for our community members. One of the things that it really does is it protects them from their vehicles being broken into. A lot of people do not want to carry that registration with them in their vehicle, where if their vehicle gets broken into and they're parked at the airport in Salt Lake or Denver, and their house gets broken into because they have access to the registration, they can now carry that registration electronically and not have that identifying information in the vehicle with them. So that's one of the things that it does. The other thing that it does is it makes it so that our commercial operators who have, or businesses that have multiple trailers or multiple vehicles that are driving around, sometimes those registrations just don't get moved like they should. And if you've got multiple trailers and you get pulled over and you don't have that registration with you, you are breaking the law. So this allows those operators to transfer those registration certificates electronically to their operators, and so they're operating within the law. The other thing that I really like about this bill is the 30-day grace period. A lot of states are already doing that. Almost all the surrounding states do that. And what that does for us is, in these larger counties like Sweetwater County, it gives us the opportunity to mail those registrations out. Our mail goes clear through Salt Lake and then back, and sometimes it can arrive late. And so people who unfortunately have, whether due to circumstances like limited income and things like that, where they have to wait to the last minute to do those registrations, it gives them the opportunity to be legal immediately from the time that they pay. So those are the things that I really like about this bill, and I'll stand for questions.
Any questions? Representative Smith.
I like the question of not having the identifying the house information being stolen from your vehicle. Does this prevent people from snapping a photo of their registration? Like, I have multiple trailers and so forth, keeping it all on my phone, and it's a digital format. Does it have to be issued by the county, or can it be a photo of something that was issued?
Mr. Cowan?
The intent, I think, of the bill, and I think that's up to you, Mr. Chairman, and your committee, but the intent of the bill is to have an electronic copy of that. So a photo would qualify for that. We did have some constituents who came to us and said, hey, look, my kid's down at UW and I'm registering the vehicle here in Sweetwater County, and they're going to be illegal, if they don't have this registration to get to them. So I'm going to have to overnight this to them. Now with this, they would be able to take a picture of that and send the picture via text to them, or email the picture of that to them, and they would be legal. So that is the intent.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. Any further questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cowan. Appreciate you joining us remotely today. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any further public testimony? Sure the truckers don't want to talk about this? No? Okay. All right. Oh, we have, yes, Ms. Parvasini is back. Hey, all right, welcome back. Oh, you are muted.
Oh, there you go. Can you hear me now, Mr. Chairman?
Can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you. Emily Parvasini, Sublette County Treasurer, and speaking on behalf of the County Treasurers Association on this bill. The intent, I think, is a good one. However, we do have some concerns, and I'm going to just throw some of those out at you here in the next few minutes. Number one, some of our counties don't have online payment portals. I know that's hard to believe. And so in order for those counties to administer this, they would have people calling in, paying over the phone with a credit card, and then emailing the information to the customer. It's not a big deal. It's just something to be aware of for you. One of the things that has been brought to my attention through other counties is that most of us send our registration renewal cards 6 to 8 weeks early. That gives them plenty of time to be forwarded to Arizona where they're spending the winter, and time for those, you know, to get there with the interstate being closed, and then it gets laid on the table and forgotten about. And then 2 weeks later, they mail it back and we have to process it. And then 2 weeks later, it gets to them again. That's part of the reason why we send those renewal reminder cards out so early, is so that they have lots and lots of time to get to those people. That being said, I also have a kid at UW who, when I went to visit recently, had expired plates, which is alarming. And so I understand where that convenience comes in, Mr. Chairman, where you have the ability to pay for those registrations and email them a copy and have them be able to drive with that on a valid registration. One of the concerns that one of the treasurers brought up is, what about rental companies? Are we going to get inundated with, say, 40 online registration renewals that I mean, there's still legwork on our backside. It doesn't automatically get updated. When you pay with a credit card, you get a little confirmation that says, yeah, you paid, but then we have to turn around and process the credit card, process the registration, mail the original documents. And so it would be kind of nice to know if a credit, or say a rental company has 40 vehicles that they do. Some treasurers only have 3 people in their office. And when you're dealing with phone payments, in the door payments, property tax payments, and now getting these processes expediently as we can to get them out the door, knowing that maybe those vehicles are driving around with expired plates, it's just another burden on the counties. Most importantly, and this is an important thing to think about, is we are going to be having a plate change very soon, 2024, 2025. We only hold a certain number of plates. So anything in my county, I'm going to probably hold for trucks and cars 1 through 3,000. Anybody that renews something with a plate currently over 3,000 gets whatever number. So now you're going to have a registration that gets mailed to these people that has a different plate number than what is actually on their vehicle. And then that becomes a law enforcement issue, where the registration that they're holding, that's a temporary 30-day, hey, I paid my registration, but now the plate number doesn't match in the computer system that YDOT or that Highway Patrol or Sheriff's deputies are going to use. It's going to show a different number in their system because we have updated their plates and we're mailing them a new set of plates with a new number on it. So those are just things to keep in mind in administrating this bill, Mr. Chairman. And I do have one other question. With that receipt that the person would be holding, would it have to be a standard 410, what your registration typically looks like? Or does it need to be just something that says, this is the plate number I paid for, this is the dollar amount that I paid, and this is the date that I did it? Just a question, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question has to do with the wording of the bill. It says the certificate of registration issued by the county treasurer may be provided in electronic form. Does that provide you, the county, with an opt-out?
Ms. Parvasini?
Mr. Chairman, Representative
Pendergraft.
Pendergraph, thank you. I believe that that does give us an out, that it allows some counties to participate and other counties to not. And because registration costs are exactly the same in every single county, say a county in the north doesn't participate in this program, but a county in the south does. That means that those people that want to be able to do this, that can't do it in the county that they live in, would be able to do it with a different county for the same exact cost and get that electronic form. And it wouldn't be as burdensome for those counties then that are not participating.
Any further questions? Thank you, Ms. Parvasini. You've been very helpful today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, with no more public testimony, Representative Larson, if you'd like to join us back up here, we'll go ahead and bring the bill back up to the dais. Committee, what's your pleasure? Right, it is moved by Berger and seconded by Stivar. No, Nemec. My ears are just off over here, guys. Sorry. All right. That's all right. Committee, any discussion on the bill and or amendments? I do have a proposed amendment, but I will wait to make sure nobody else has one. Okay, simple and easy amendment, line 10 on page 2. And I would place a right at where it says a copy, in between a and copy, it would say physical or electronic. And so we would just insert physical or electronic. So the sentence would then read a physical or electronic copy of the certificate of registration. That way where there is no consternation with law enforcement.
Second.
Seconded by Representative O'Hearn. Question being called. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. All right, that amendment passes. Any further discussion and or amendments? Question being called. Diana, would you please call roll on House Bill 277 as amended?
Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Obermuller,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraph,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
No.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes, 1 no, do pass with amendment.
All right, committee, thank you so much. Just for your guys' edification, committee. Just to kind of grab everybody's attention, this is your last set of House bills. Your next charge will be to make Senate files better. Okay, they send us a lot of bad stuff and we have to fix it. So
They always do.
it's incumbent upon us to make sure we fix their mistakes. So please take a look and start reading up on bills that look like they will be headed this way. Certainly don't have to read everything, but be paying attention when the speaker starts reading those in. Potentially tomorrow, we will have our next meeting on Tuesday and we'll know exactly which bills we're going after. All right. Thank you so much, committee, and we're adjourned.